So where were we? 1988. 87 has been full on. Yeah, pretty much done everything that year. Ticked every box that year, like. Basically a next level up from 85. Although the shows were a little bit smaller, like, because like in 85, it was it was Venom. There were big venues, like, so the crowds weren't as big, like ever got as big, and that was Venom at the peak, like 85. But in terms of just loads of stuff happening, it all sort of happened in that year, like, 87. Yeah, more varied. 88 kicks in, right? Now, I'm at Jed's house, the drummer. He's the younger brother of the manager, Eric, who was the manager of Venom. And, just sitting cups of coffee, trying not to get bitten off his dog, and, watching music videos. And, Jed says, I mean, we do need another guitarist, don't we, Rob? Like, I said, well, yeah, so, but, we sort of do, like, because all the American bands have all got two guitarists, and it's a full live sound, so I wasn't in a disagreement, but I he says, well, I think he showed us a picture of like some lad, he says, well, we'll get this lad in. He's been sending audition tapes into Neat Records and that. I said, well, I wasn't, it was my territory, the guitar, I wasn't sure. So I wasn't really budging, like, so what they decided to do, which was, Jed says, well, why don't we get, I think Tony Dolan is going to go on a rhythm guitar, and we're going to get Darren back in on bass. And I thought, aye, that'll work, So that was basically the reason to go back to become a 5-piece was for that reason, because Slayer were a 4-piece, but there was 2 guitars. Exodus, all the thrash stuff was always 2 guitars. So, it was, when you had, what they call that, Dimebag Darrell, the 4-piece with just the 1 guitar came after the thrash. You didn't really need the 4-piece, like, you just had to just fucking go out there and do it and have a good have good music equipment, so you get a good guitar sound and bass sound and everything when you go and do on stage. I certainly never had any equipment borders, and that was a problem, really. But anyway, I was all in agreement with 2 guitars, so that was the lineup. And 88, from what I can remember, it was its own thing. It was its own thing. The highlight of 88 was, as a 5-piece, we toured Europe again with some American bands, and was shit hot, like, it was really, would be sort of now, like, with Darren in the band, and I mean, Tony Dolan was, handling playing rhythm guitar pretty well, like, and, sort of, Tony Dolan had sort of reinvented himself again as a Scotty in from Anthrax. I did see obviously I was aware of Anthrax, and I thought, well, I actually quite liked a couple of their songs. And I thought, well, that's a way that we could start writing, like, we'll go in that direction a bit more. But that sort of running around the stage was adopted by Tony Dolan, and it was a natural thing for Darren Cooper, the bassist, to do anyway. So the dynamic was great on stage. I just stood to one side and just looked cool as fuck as ever, and just pulled me weird sort of occult signs, which I didn't know what the fuck they meant, and just done me thing, and but we were definitely shit hot. The time had arrived for that band like Atomkraft is that 5-piece, and we're, you know, rather than feeling we were up against it when we played live, up against this wall of noise from these other bands and also thrash bands from countries that were starting to get it as well, like, you know, European bands and stuff, and British bands like the British band Onslaught. They got that sound straight away. You know, Atomkraft were always a unique sounding band. Like, now we had to evolve, and even when we did evolve, it was still Atomkraft. Like, we didn't sound like a band, an American band, you know, and a lot of those bands did, like, you know, which is, I'm not knocking it, like, but it wasn't what we were. So, but by the time we were 5-piece in 1988, when we did play these shows, there was no feeling from any of us in the band, like, you know, oh, we've got a bit of a mountain to climb to you know, to be as loud and as powerful and as, you know, full on as this band that have just been on, or the band that's coming on afterward. You know, we knew we were good. We knew the reaction is changed from the crowd. The crowd just saw us kind of as just a thrash metal band, you know, equal to all the rest of them. But with our own sort of, obviously, our own quirks. There was always more of that sort of, visually, there'd be more of a fun look to her, especially with Swifty, the singer. You know, he was a great front man, great eye contact and with the crowd and getting the crowd involved. Proper front man, not many of them about. And, you know, you've got to have a front man, you know, and that's exactly what we had. So everything was there. That's the shame. That is the shame about Atomkraft. That, and also, you know, if I'd been, basically, to tell you the truth, if I'd been getting paid, if I'd got some money, I might have stuck out with it a bit longer. But I didn't make any money, so I was aware that this band was good, but you know, I was seriously thinking now, like, what am I going to do next? Like, because this is, even though the band sounds great, we've just done a great tour. Well, anyway, I mean, the high point of that year, 88, was we played at Behind the Iron Curtain, which was still up then, you know, so in enemy territory, you know, Soviet Union. We played at Poznan, a city in Poland, and we played this sort of stadium gig with these other bands, and there's footage of that. I think there is footage of that knocking about somewhere, and it would be nice to see that emerge somehow, somewhere. I think I don't know why that isn't in existence, you know, because it's part of the history of the band, like, and the history of heavy metal. Like, I know, like, sort of, there's another couple of bands. Was it Nasty Savage? I think their footage is up online on YouTube. It really needs to go up, like. So that was a highlight. That was a big deal. That, like, I think the only band that had played Behind the Iron Curtain in the Soviet Union up to that point had been Iron Maiden, which was like 2 years earlier. That was such an amazing experience, you know. Too many sort of memories and everything to explain just in this short video. Like I say, as in the future, it would be nice to, with the help of AI, to create sort of even a movie, you know, of the whole sort of basically Atomkraft experience. Like, it might have to be 4 movies, like, might have to be each year, because, you know, my mind's still, I'm just rambling here, but if I just sort of sit and sort of work it all out and try and remember all the things, I think there's quite a lot there that I could suggest to AI that could be created into some, like I say, movies, which would be fascinating. You could even get the real characters, us, you know, the faces. I mean, it's just going to be remarkable. But 88 was also a great year as that 5-piece, high points. But the thing that didn't happen that year was album. We didn't get Neat Records were struggling because all the smaller labels were struggling, like, and we're trying to get a deal. The band Atomkraft was trying to get a deal with I think it was Music for Nations at the time. But because all the small record labels were struggling around the world, you had like, literally thousands of metal bands all running to these large labels that had the backing, and I think there's probably that, and probably other things as well that were sort of making it a negative thing for Atomkraft to get signed to any one of these, labels, whatever was going on. All I know is that, we'd never sounded better, like, and the songs, we demoed an album called Atomized, and, I was really starting to kick in, really starting to focusing in how I wanted to see the band go, which was I would have, at that point, I was sort of focused on sending the band towards a sort of thrash metal Iron Maiden. That's where I wanted the band to go. I thought there was room there, like there was a big empty space to fill, and I thought that would be great, like a thrashy Iron Maiden. Kind of like, I think Halloween, the German band, was sort of doing that a little bit, but I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking a British thrash Iron Maiden, and then it could have went from there. It could have went anywhere, It could have went, but the band, Jed and even Swifty, I mean, these guys were just strictly metal, like strictly rock. There's no way on earth that we're going to change. Back in the day, if you'd done like an acoustic intro to a song, it was a bit gay, like, and so you would always have the same sort of chorus effect on the guitar intro, and then you'd have the song coming in. It was always very cliched, like, and I started to get a bit sick of it, all to tell you the truth. The confines of what was acceptable in the songwriting, the formula that you've got to stick to. I mean, I suppose thrash kept us going for a sort of longer than I would have in the world of metal in that way, because it was a new technique, it was a new way of playing. But I would have always have wanted to be in a band where it was constantly evolving and constantly changing. That's not a common thing, but it's certainly not uncommon. It's certainly all the bands that I was ever influenced by: the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, even Rush. All the 60s bands evolved, like, they went through changes. 1960s bands, Bowie went through all the different changes, and to be stuck playing the same sort of music and not evolving. And then plus the name of Atomkraft, years later, 20 years later, I discovered Rammstein. This was around about the time that it would have been when I was just about starting Atomkraft, and I thought I'd better do some research into metal and that what's about, So, obviously Rammstein had been gone for a little while, like, and I looked at the Rammstein. I think I bought the DVD, and I just thought, this would have been Atomkraft. This is where I would have pushed Atomkraft in my songwriting, like, because the word Atomkraft would have suited perfect. It would have just became Atomkraft would have just became like the British Rammstein, even ahead of Rammstein, probably even before Rammstein. Or if not, it would have certainly I would have saw Rammstein and I would have thought, aye, let's gone that way a little bit. But, I was never paid, man. I was never paid. So, if you're not making any money, you do all these big gigs and all the big shows, and you tick every box, like is like in your teens you're a little rock star and you tick all the little boxes, big boxes actually, and you do all the things, but then it becomes, where's the money, like, surely I need where's the equipment? Why don't I even get some money for music equipment? Nothing. So 88 was great. Atomized, the album, was what we were going to do if we get signed. I was looking, and there was a feeling in the air that you know, rock and metal. This was slightly before grunge. I didn't know about grunge coming along. That was like a year and a half later. I didn't know, nobody knew what grunge was. I just knew that was a feeling in the air, and I think I just felt like I'd outgrown the metal. And I've always been really an indie musician. Well, I was indie before the name indie was invented, like. So it's always been, for me, it's always been pop, like, you know, pop music, guitar pop, you know, just the 1960s. All the 1960s stuff was pop, guitar pop, you know, Beatles, Who, you know, even Doors. It's all just great songs, you know. And like I've said before, I mean, I was on the tour bus with Atomkraft listening to the Smiths, you know. I started getting into the Smiths, like, and because I thought the Smiths were like the 60s, I thought, wow, it's like, this is like the 1960s. So by the end of Atomkraft, I wasn't really listening to heavy metal. Like, I was, you know, it was the Smiths, it was the Cure, the Cult, Killing Joke, you know. And then the Beatles started to come back in with us again, and really digging into the 1960s stuff. So by the time I was 19, I was full on back to the 60s, like, you know. And because obviously there was so much I didn't know. There's some, you know, I said, well, I might have knew the singles, a lot of the singles from, say, the Kinks, but I didn't know the albums. So I was buying the albums, and you know, it was, you know, like, really actually became quite inspired by Ray Davies, like, you know, and all the 60s stuff, which is why I went on to form with me mate Bry the band The Shapes. And well, that's pretty much it, really. I left the band, and then Tony Dolan had joined Venom as the singer. So, you know, in 1990, and just they threw the towel in. Jed and Swifty came up and to us one day when I was, I met Swifty by accident. I was on my mod scooter, and I went into this car upholstery shop, because I was wanting like a Union Jack seat cover for my Vespa. And I got in there, and Swifty's working in there. Oh, wow, man. So got nattering. And then they came to see us at my student digs flat. Swifty and Jed, drummer Jed, and they were wanting Atomkraft to do something with Atomkraft again. And I was, you know, I'm banging to my acoustic stuff, my folk stuff. I've got my driftwood band going, and you know, I've got the short end. I'm on my mod scooter. The last thing I was wanting to do at this age, which I would have been at about 24. Last thing I was wanting to do is going back to that, like going back to the heavy metal, like. So, you know, just shook hands and didn't, you know, wasn't interested, like, you know. They did approach us, like, you know, a few years later again when I was out street performing with me puppetry, and I did go along and see them, and I did talk to them about, because I did feel, this was like 2004, I did feel like I was wanting to get back to doing a bit of rock, you know, get it. I thought my best stuff hadn't been written, you know. And I've got home recording studios and all the gear. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be remembered, you know, as a songwriter for just what I've done with Atomkraft, because it's good stuff, but I know I can do a lot better now. And I've got all the production gear. So I had a meeting with him, and I don't know, I was saying about, we'll record an album, and his Eric manager was going, well, it's no point, you know. I don't know what they were up to. I think they were just wanting to get like an Atomkraft together Was it to have a go at Tony Dolan? I don't know. But my thing was to be creative. You know, I would have got back with them to be creative. To let's write some albums and record some albums that are better than what we're doing in the past. To fucking show what we can do. But no, there was, in my opinion, well, I think it was just strictly for doing some shows, you know. And I just felt like I just felt like I was being messed about a bit, and I didn't like it, you know. So, but I still had a feeling of I wanted to get some heavy metal out of my system, you know. And this is me in my sort of mid-30s. And I formed my band Atomkraft, and I'd done that for 2 years, and those were shit hot songs, like, and that was a great little band, and that was pretty much the last of that. Later on, I done my Redhead with Horns solo project. I done my Pilo Boot Boys, which is completely full on. And in terms of authenticity and realism, real is the Pilo Boot Boys is fucking mental. Like, I would probably say it's the best thing I've done, the Pilo Boot Boys. Like, bearing in mind that I'm a creative person, like a script writer, you know, I am not a Pilo Boot Boy. I'm creating like a movie, you know, or a soundtrack for a movie. And I think that's the best thing I've ever done. That, like, even though it's completely, it's never going to be on the radio, put it that way. And there was me Driftwood. Driftwood was unbelievable. You know, the Shapes were a fantastic band. Atomkraft were great, and this my Geffen stuff was very good. And literally all my best stuff, all my best work, like, has been better than Atomkraft. You know, it's been better than Atomkraft, and that's not knocking Atomkraft. It's just like, you know, as I grew in confidence as a musician and a songwriter, and I started singing myself. Obviously, I took over the reins of melodies and lyrics and all this sort of stuff. And, you know, I was still just a teenager when I'd done Atomkraft. But, you know, the thing is, that is what they lost. Like, that is what they lost. They lost this sort of, in a way, and I'm not saying this in an egotistical way, like, but they lost the goose that would lay the golden egg, because there was so much songwriting, right? So many fucking great songs that I could have created for that band like Atomkraft if I'd only gotten paid, you know. But that was their loss. And it's another lesson, just goes to show, you know, it takes two to tango, right? So you got to have your great songwriters, your great band, you got to have your great management as well. That's the only way it works. The only way it works. Atomkraft is complete proof to that, you know, that you can be a good band, a great live band with some very good songs, right? But you've got to have the management, like, to get into that next level, like, you've just got to. And I think that's about it. That is about it. After all said and done, it's something that I experienced with all those human beings, all those people at Atomkraft, from the very start to the very end. You know, the Venom, the management, the band members, the roadies, you know, the other people who were there on the peripherals. I mean, it's a great movie, like, and I wouldn't swap it for anything, like, because I got to experience stuff that teenagers didn't get to experience, you know. I got to do all them things. And, you know, if I had money to pay for all them experiences, I would have paid the money up front to have all them experiences at the end of the day, you know, because you didn't get out for now, like. And I feel proud and happy about my years with Atomkraft. And it's not to blame anybody that after Atomkraft, my bands or my projects never got any of the same sort of events or happenings and stuff happen like that, like Atomkraft. That's just the way the world went, you know. And I'm just fortunate that I just caught the tail end of that 90 of rock and roll. Basically, I caught the tail end of rock and roll because, like, by 1990, grunge came in, and then a few years later, Britpop. You know, it was all dead. Like, it was finished. You know, by the end of the 90s, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame doors were shut, man. And I've often thought, like, in a way, it's sort of a good thing, you know, because it sort of puts music of the 20th century, it gives it a full stop and ending. You know, the internet and everything came in. So it started with Robert Johnson and Woody Guthrie. It started in the Americana and ended, you know, in the late 90s with sort of ridiculously over commercial sort of Simon Cowell pop, you know, but it did end. And that's sort of those decades of 70, 80 years, you know. I got my foot in the door and I got my own little piece of rock and roll history. And I'm very happy about that. So, thank you.